Mist drifts low over an endless ocean of green, the Amazon breathing like some living giant. Rivers cut across the land like veins, glimmering under a shroud of morning fog, as if carrying secrets older than memory itself. For centuries, explorers looked upon this vast rainforest and declared it empty, a wilderness too harsh, too unforgiving, too wild for cities to grow. Textbooks called it pristine, untouched, an Eden where man could never truly rule. But what if that was a lie? In recent years, technology has pierced the canopy. LiDAR scans, satellites, and archaeological digs have peeled back the leaves and the shadows, revealing what no one was supposed to find. Massive networks of roads stretching for miles, plazas larger than football fields, geometric earthworks carved with precision, and evidence of sprawling urban layouts buried beneath the jungle floor. What science once dismissed as fantasy is now rising from the soil as undeniable fact. For generations, local myths spoke of great cities hidden in the forest. Conquistadors claimed they glimpsed glittering roads and towering structures before the jungle swallowed them whole. Yet every time such stories surfaced, they were branded exaggerations, delusions, or lies. Scholars said the soil could never sustain large populations, that the rainforest itself was too hostile for complex civilization. But the ground is speaking now, and it tells a very different story. These discoveries are forcing even the most cautious scientists to admit a shocking truth. Beneath what we once thought was untouched wilderness lies evidence of an ancient urban landscape. Not just villages, not scattered tribes, but cities. Planned, engineered, interconnected cities. So the question grows louder, echoing through the canopy like a whisper carried by the wind. Who built them, and why did they vanish? Were they ordinary societies who rose and fell like all others, or the remnants of a much deeper, forgotten chapter in human history? Make sure to subscribe and ring the bell, because every mystery has a hidden side, and we're here to uncover it together. The Amazon has guarded its secrets for centuries, but the trees are finally parting, revealing glimpses of something vast, something impossible to ignore. But as the jungle gives up its secrets, the question isn't just whether cities once stood here, it's whether we've been living on the ruins of a forgotten civilization all along. The Amazon canopy is a living wall. For centuries, its dense green veil has hidden whatever lay beneath. From the air, all one could see was an unbroken expanse of trees stretching to the horizon, concealing every trace of human presence. For archaeologists, this seemed like confirmation of what they already believed, that the rainforest was a graveyard for ambition, a place where soil eroded too quickly, floods drowned the land, and human settlement could never thrive on a grand scale. At best, the Amazon could support scattered tribes and temporary camps. The story seemed closed. Then came LiDAR. Light detection and ranging. LiDAR uses lasers to map landscapes by firing pulses that cut through vegetation and measure the ground beneath. Mounted on planes or drones, it allows scientists to strip away the canopy with mathematics, peeling back centuries of growth in digital silence. Where eyes once saw only endless green, the computer screens began to reveal geometry, lines, circles, rectangles, forms that nature rarely creates on her own. What emerged shocked even the skeptics. Beneath the jungle, vast patterns began to take shape. Networks of straight causeways stretched for miles, connecting clusters of settlements like the arteries of a hidden body. Massive plazas opened up in perfect circles, some larger than modern football fields. Rectangular compounds appeared in grids, their angles sharp and deliberate. The ground was scarred with ditches and embankments forming enormous geoglyphs, squares, diamonds, and rings so precise they could only have been the work of organized human hands. In one survey of southwestern Amazonia, LiDAR revealed more than 35 large settlements, complete with defensive walls and planned layouts. In another region, researchers found causeways elevated above the floodplain, engineered to withstand seasonal rains. Some of these roads stretched for more than 20 miles, straight as an arrow through terrain that should have been impassable. These were not random clearings. They were cities, and yet they were not cities in the modern sense of steel and stone. They were earthen, carved into the soil itself, shaped with precision and scale. Over time, the forest reclaimed them, vines pulling their walls back into the earth, trees rising where boulevards once lay. But LiDAR could not be fooled. The ghosts of urban planning still etched their signatures into the land. This was not the Amazon that textbooks described. The discoveries shattered the myth of an untouched wilderness. For decades, archaeologists argued that Amazonian soil, known as terra preta, a dark, fertile earth created by human cultivation, was too rare to support large populations. The forest, they said, was a fragile ecosystem, incapable of sustaining agriculture on a massive scale. Civilization here was impossible. Yet the sheer scale of these cities told another story. Tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of people must have lived here. They cultivated the land, engineered waterways, built causeways, and organized themselves into societies with enough labor and vision to reshape the jungle. Suddenly, the old narratives no longer hold. What was once dismissed as fantasy began to look like prophecy. In the early 20th century, British explorer Percy Fawcett disappeared into the Amazon, searching for what he called the City of Z. His reports spoke of immense ruins, roads paved with stone, and complex settlements hidden in the rainforest. At the time, scholars mocked him. They said he was chasing mirages, driven by myth and madness. When Fawcett and his expedition vanished in 1925, his quest became a cautionary tale. Proof, they said, that the Amazon held no cities, only death. But with every new LiDAR survey, Fawcett's words echo back with haunting clarity. Perhaps he was not delusional. Perhaps he glimpsed what science was not ready to admit. Even earlier, conquistadors returning from Amazonian journeys spoke of glittering towns and vast populations along the rivers. Chroniclers wrote of roads and fortresses, of women warriors and kingdoms rich with resources. Yet when later expeditions followed their routes, they found nothing. The jungle had swallowed everything, and the scholars concluded that the conquistadors must have exaggerated. Now, centuries later, the earth itself seems to be vindicating those old accounts. If cities once stood here, then the scale of what we have uncovered so far is only the beginning. Archaeologists admit that LiDAR surveys have only scratched the surface, focusing on limited regions of the rainforest. The Amazon spans more than 5 million square kilometers, most of it still unscanned, still silent. What else lies beneath the trees? What vast urban landscapes remain hidden, waiting for technology to lift the green veil? The implications reach far beyond archaeology. If the Amazon supported sprawling cities, then the entire understanding of pre-Columbian America must change. No longer could we say that advanced civilizations were confined to the Andes, to Mesoamerica, or to the coasts. The heart of the rainforest itself was once alive with urban life, sophisticated and interconnected. But the discoveries do more than rewrite maps. They force us to ask uncomfortable questions. How could so many archaeologists for so long be so certain that the Amazon was empty? Why were indigenous oral traditions ignored? Their stories of ancestors who built great cities dismissed as legend? And why, when explorers spoke of wonders in the forest, did academia move so quickly to brand them liars? The canopy has been hiding more than ruins. It has hidden truths. Truths that challenge the authority of established history. Truths that hint at civilizations erased from memory, not just by time, but by deliberate neglect. As LiDAR continues to scan the Amazon, each new revelation makes the silence more deafening. If one valley holds 30 cities, how many more lie buried beyond? If one cluster of geoglyphs marks ceremonial centers, how many others connect into a network larger than anything we have dared imagine? The forest does not give up its secrets easily, but with every pulse of laser light, another fragment of the story comes into focus. Cities where there were none, roads where there should be only rivers, geometry where only chaos was expected. It is as if the Amazon itself is whispering back. You thought me empty, but I was never empty. You thought me wilderness, but I was once a world. And that whisper grows louder with every discovery. And if these were just the first cities revealed, imagine what secrets still lie hidden in the shadows of the forest. When LiDAR revealed sprawling urban landscapes beneath the Amazon, the next question was inevitable. Who built them? Roads, plazas, and ceremonial geoglyphs do not rise from the soil on their own. Someone planned them, engineered them, and sustained them for generations. But who were these forgotten builders whose cities vanished so completely that even their names dissolved into silence? The mainstream explanation begins with the indigenous cultures of the Amazon itself. Archaeologists argue that these were not scattered bands of foragers, but large and organized societies, complex chiefdoms capable of coordinating labor, agriculture, and trade across vast territories. The fertile terra preta soils scattered throughout the rainforest support this theory. Unlike the thin, nutrient-poor soil common to the Amazon, terra preta is man-made, enriched by charcoal, bone, and organic matter. Indigenous people created it deliberately, transforming otherwise hostile ground into farmland that could support dense populations. By this account, the builders of the Amazon's lost cities were indigenous engineers who mastered their environment, cultivating crops, managing fisheries, and sustaining large settlements. When Europeans arrived in the 16th century, diseases swept through these populations faster than news of the strangers themselves. Epidemics destroyed entire communities, leaving villages abandoned and cities reclaimed by the jungle long before later explorers arrived. What they found was wilderness, but only because the societies that once thrived there had already been erased. It is a plausible story, and many scholars insist it is the only rational explanation. Yet cracks appear in the narrative. The scale and precision of the structures unearthed challenge even the most generous estimates of what chiefdoms could achieve. Geoglyphs, etched across miles of land, form perfect circles and squares, their symmetry undisturbed by terrain. Causeways run arrow-straight for 20 miles or more, raised and drained to withstand floods. Plazas align with celestial events, solstices, equinoxes, and lunar cycles, suggesting astronomical knowledge far beyond the needs of agriculture. Here, the mystery deepens. If these were simply chiefdoms, why did their architecture reflect a cosmology written in the stars? Why did they design earthworks with such scale and symbolism that they resemble the ceremonial centers of distant civilizations? The Amazon was isolated, we are told, yet its cities echo patterns found in the Andes, in Mesoamerica, even across oceans. Alternative theories step into the void where certainty falters. Indigenous myths themselves offer tantalizing fragments. Across the Amazon, oral traditions speak of giants who once roamed the land, shaping the rivers and clearing vast spaces where ordinary humans could never endure. Some tribes describe pale-skinned visitors in feathered robes who brought knowledge of farming, astronomy, and ritual. Others speak of gods descending from the sky, teaching their ancestors how to read the heavens and tame the earth. To Western ears, these tales were dismissed as folklore. Yet, when the earth reveals plazas aligned with solstices, do the myths still sound like fantasy, or like memory dressed in myth? Consider the parallels. In the Andes, legends of Viracocha tell of a bearded, white-skinned figure who brought knowledge of civilization. In Mesoamerica, Quetzalcoatl was remembered as a feathered serpent god who taught astronomy and agriculture. Across the Pacific, Polynesian myths recall shining visitors who guided navigation across the stars. The details differ, but the pattern repeats. Cultures separated by oceans preserve memories of teachers. Builders or gods who appeared, shared knowledge, and vanished. Could the Amazonian civilizations have been part of this larger pattern? If their cities were aligned to the stars, was this knowledge developed independently or inherited from a much older, forgotten source? Mainstream archaeology pushes back hard against such speculation. Scholars argue that celestial alignments are common across early cultures because the sky was the most reliable calendar, but the sheer scale of Amazon's designs suggests more than practicality. The effort required to carve giant geoglyphs visible only from above, or to align plazas with solstice sunrises, indicates a worldview obsessed with the cosmos, with embedding meaning into the very landscape. Where did this worldview come from? Some suggest it was born in the Amazon itself, a unique expression of indigenous spirituality. Others whisper of something more ancient, echoes of a global civilization that existed before recorded history, fragments of knowledge scattered after a great cataclysm. Could the builders of the Amazon's cities have been inheritors of wisdom passed down from survivors of such a lost epoch? The question lingers, unprovable yet impossible to dismiss entirely. Archaeology provides only pieces of the puzzle. We find the roads, the plazas, the geoglyphs. We see alignments with stars, but not the texts or inscriptions that would reveal their meaning. Without written records, we are left with fragments, earthworks shaped like questions no one alive remembers how to answer. And yet, the absence of writing deepens the mystery. Civilizations capable of organizing thousands to move Earth and shape landscapes rarely leave no trace of language, no inscriptions to mark their triumphs. Did these people truly build without recording, or have their symbols been lost, erased, or buried deeper than we have yet searched? The forest itself conspires in the erasure. Stone, the medium of permanence across the Old World, is scarce in the Amazon basin. The builders worked with earth and wood, materials swallowed quickly by the jungle. Time conspires as well. 5 centuries of abandonment transformed plazas into fields of trees, causeways into ridges, geoglyphs into shadows only visible from above. History does not just fade here, it is devoured. But myth remembers what the forest tries to hide. Myths of giants, gods, visitors, and cycles of destruction echo across tribes. Were they poetic metaphors, or half-buried memories of real events? Did a civilization rise in the Amazon long before Europeans arrived, only to fall so completely that even its memory had to be preserved in story rather than stone? The mainstream account of chiefdoms devastated by disease explains much, but it does not explain why their cities carry patterns found half a world away. It does not explain why indigenous myths speak of teachers from beyond. And it does not explain how an impossible civilization flourished in a place long thought uninhabitable. Perhaps the builders were ordinary people, ingenious and resilient, carving a life out of the rainforest. Perhaps they were more, heirs to an older knowledge, fragments of a forgotten cycle of human history. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between, blurred by the jungle and the silence of centuries. What is certain is this. The builders of the Amazon were not primitive, not scattered, and not insignificant. They were city makers, astronomers, engineers of earth and sky. They left behind not ruins, but questions. Questions that grow louder with every discovery, and the loudest of them all is this. But if they were only indigenous chiefdoms, why do their cities echo the grandeur and precision of civilizations half a world away? For centuries, the Amazon was described as a place of absence. To European scholars, it was an inhospitable wilderness, a green desert where human ambition could never take root. Yet woven into early reports, journals, and indigenous stories were constant whispers of something greater, whispers that were ignored, dismissed, or deliberately silenced. From the very first encounters, conquistadors claimed they saw cities. Francisco de Orellana, who journeyed down the Amazon River in 1542, wrote of populous settlements, fortified towns, and sprawling roads. He described kingdoms with armies of women warriors, echoes of the Greek Amazons, from which the river itself took its name. Chroniclers repeated his words, yet his accounts were met with skepticism. When later expeditions retraced his route, they found nothing but jungle. Scholars quickly concluded Orellana had lied, exaggerating to win royal favor or funding. His descriptions were written off as fantasy, and the official narrative was sealed. The Amazon had never held civilizations. This pattern would repeat again and again. In the 18th and 19th centuries, explorers spoke of earthworks, of stone mounds, of strange artifacts discovered in riverbanks. Missionaries recorded local oral traditions of lost cities and ancestral builders. Yet each time such stories reached Europe, they were quietly buried under layers of doubt. The colonial mindset insisted that indigenous peoples were primitive, incapable of the engineering feats seen in other parts of the world. To admit otherwise would challenge not only archaeology, but the ideology of conquest itself. By the mid-20th century, the dismissal became doctrine. Influential archaeologists promoted what came to be known as the empty Amazon theory. According to this model, the rainforest soil was too poor, its floods too destructive, and its ecology too fragile to support large-scale agriculture. At most, it could host small mobile bands of hunter-gatherers. To suggest otherwise was academic heresy. Careers were made on the assumption that the Amazon had never been home to complex societies. But beneath this consensus lurked inconvenient evidence. Farmers occasionally uncovered shards of pottery in remote clearings, fragments far from any known settlement. Reports surfaced of giant bones, said to be human, dug from riverbeds. Adventurers claimed to have seen stone ruins deep in the forest, overgrown but unmistakably shaped. Each of these anomalies was dismissed. Misidentifications, exaggerations, or outright fabrications. Files were shelved, specimens misplaced, reports forgotten. Was this simply the inertia of science, slow to update its paradigms, or was something else at work? The more one examines the history of Amazonian exploration, the harder it is to ignore the pattern. Evidence that supported the empty Amazon model was celebrated. Evidence that contradicted it was ridiculed, suppressed, or erased. Scholars who dared to suggest that the rainforest once held great civilizations were marginalized. Their work was labeled speculative, their reputations quietly tarnished. The result was the same. The narrative of a pristine, untouched Amazon remained unchallenged for generations. Why? Part of the answer lies in colonial ideology. To European powers, the Amazon was valuable as a resource frontier, a land of rubber, timber, and minerals. It was easier to justify extraction and domination if the land was portrayed as empty, its people as scattered and insignificant. To acknowledge that the rainforest had once sustained vast civilizations would be to admit that indigenous cultures were heirs to a legacy of ingenuity equal to any Old World empire. Such an admission threatened the very foundation of Western superiority. Another part lies in academic convenience. The empty Amazon theory was simple, elegant, and easy to teach. It fit neatly into the broader narrative of world history. Great civilizations arose in fertile river valleys like the Nile, the Indus, and the Yangtze, not in tropical jungles. To claim otherwise required rewriting textbooks, re-evaluating research, and challenging entrenched authorities. It was far easier to preserve the status quo. And yet, the indigenous people of the Amazon never stopped telling their stories. Oral traditions spoke of ancestors who built vast earthworks, who aligned their plazas with the stars, who managed the forest itself like a garden. They remembered cycles of creation and destruction, floods that swept away entire peoples, and gods who once walked among them. But in the eyes of scholars, these stories were myth, not history, folklore, not fact. Now, with LiDAR scans revealing geometric earthworks hidden beneath the trees, the old myths look different. The indigenous were not preserving fantasy, they were preserving memories. What Western science dismissed as legend now emerges as testimony. This raises an unsettling question. How much knowledge has been buried under centuries of dismissal? What reports, artifacts, and discoveries were lost because they did not fit the prevailing model? How many truths were hidden, not by the jungle, but by the biases of those who claim to study it? Consider the stories of giant bones. Throughout the 19th century, newspapers occasionally reported discoveries of massive human remains across the Americas, often attributed to giants. Most were dismissed as errors or hoaxes. Yet indigenous traditions across the Amazon speak of ancient giants, builders, and warriors who shaped the land. Were all such reports lies, or were some inconvenient anomalies quietly swept aside to preserve the narrative of the empty forest? Consider the strange artifacts, figurines, tools, and carved stones that surfaced in remote regions, only to vanish into private collections or museum basements. Without context, without study, their stories were silenced. How many of these objects hinted at connections, trade networks, or influences that mainstream history refused to acknowledge? Suppression need not always be deliberate. Sometimes it is simply neglect, a failure to see what is in plain sight. But sometimes suppression is more active. A narrative as powerful as the empty Amazon did not survive by accident. It was maintained, reinforced, and defended, even against mounting contradictions. Now the jungle itself has begun to overturn it. With every LiDAR scan, every excavation, every rediscovered artifact, the rainforest is speaking louder. The myth of emptiness is collapsing. What was once called exaggeration is revealed as understatement. And yet, even as science catches up, the shadow of suppression lingers. If it took centuries to admit that cities lay beneath the Amazon, what else remains hidden because it does not fit? How many reports of strange ruins, anomalous artifacts, or unexplainable alignments are still gathering dust in forgotten archives? How much of human history has been erased, not by time but by choice? Because at the heart of this mystery lies a deeper truth. History is not just what happened. History is what we are allowed to remember. And in the Amazon, remembrance has been a battlefield. Indigenous voices silenced, explorers mocked, anomalies buried, all in service of a narrative that made the jungle seem empty, exploitable, and unimportant. Now, as the earthworks rise from the shadows, the question turns back on us. If the jungle was rewriting history today, exposing a truth denied for centuries, what else might it reveal tomorrow? What other erased chapters wait to be recovered? And more disturbingly, how much was erased on purpose? If the jungle is rewriting history today, what else has been erased from the human story on purpose? The revelations of lost cities beneath the Amazon naturally lead to the most haunting question of all. If such vast and intricate civilizations once thrived here, what happened to them? The traces uncovered by LiDAR hint at bustling centers of life. Yet today, all that remains are mounds swallowed by jungle and whispers in oral tradition. To piece together their disappearance, we must sift through science, myth, and speculation, each offering partial truths, none delivering final certainty. The silence of the forest presses hardest where voices should have been. Mainstream scholarship points first to disease, a cataclysm no less devastating than any sword or fire. When Europeans reached the Amazon, they carried unseen armies, viruses, bacteria, and contagions unknown to the indigenous immune systems. Smallpox, measles, influenza, invisible invaders that spread faster than explorers themselves. Entire communities, some never in direct contact with Europeans, collapsed in weeks. Populations that once numbered in the millions dwindled to scattered survivors. In this reading, the cities didn't vanish in a single dramatic event, but crumbled as their lifeblood ebbed away, leaving plazas empty, causeways untrodden, and the jungle free to reclaim what human hands had shaped. Yet even within this explanation, something unsettles. The scale of devastation suggested by archaeology doesn't align neatly with simple population loss. Cities designed with such grandeur, aligning to solstices and equinoxes, hint at cultural and intellectual depths that should have left more enduring echoes. Disease may explain abandonment, but it does not fully account for the sudden severance of knowledge, the absence of preserved traditions of city building, and the silence in the archaeological record. Could something else have struck, either alongside or after the plagues? One possibility lies in the shifting moods of the Amazon itself. Climate data hints at fluctuations in rainfall patterns across centuries. Prolonged droughts or catastrophic floods could have destabilized entire networks of settlement. In oral traditions preserved among indigenous groups, there are stories of waters rising without warning, of great floods that drowned villages and reshaped the land. While some see these as allegories, others argue they may encode memories of very real cataclysms. Perhaps the sprawling causeways revealed by LiDAR once served as lifelines through an environment prone to extremes. Raised roads above floods, arteries of survival. If these protective measures failed, entire populations may have been forced to scatter. Then there are myths more difficult to place neatly in science. Among certain Amazonian peoples are tales of gods who once walked among them, teaching agriculture, astronomy, and art. These gods eventually departed, leaving humans vulnerable. Were these memories of foreign visitors, advanced teachers from a forgotten culture, or metaphors for the fragility of human power? Legends also tell of giants, beings larger than life who helped shape the landscape and then vanished without a trace. Skeptics dismiss such stories as metaphorical, yet they echo myths from cultures oceans apart, from the Nephilim of biblical tradition to the Titans of Greek lore. Could the Amazon's myths be fragments of a deeper, global memory of civilizations erased by time? Some researchers speculate on cyclical rises and falls, epochs in which humanity reaches heights of knowledge only to be shattered by catastrophe. To them, the Amazonian cities are not isolated anomalies, but chapters of a recurring story, one in which civilizations bloom and wither, leaving barely a scar. Comparisons multiply. The megaliths of Bolivia, so finely carved they seem to mock modern engineering. Submerged ruins off the coast of India, resting beneath the waves like drowned time capsules. Geometric patterns hidden under the sands of the Sahara, hinting at cities erased by desert winds. Each fragment stands alone, yet together they suggest a continuity mainstream history refuses to recognize. If the Amazon was once a cradle of such an advanced culture, then its vanishing should not be read as a final end, but as a reminder of fragility. Civilizations, no matter how great, are not immune to collapse. Yet collapse itself may be misleading. Did the builders truly vanish? Or did they merge back into the forest, their descendants still among today's indigenous tribes? Perhaps the grandeur of their cities was sacrificed to survival, knowledge fragmented into oral traditions that scholars have too often dismissed as myth. In this sense, the legacy has not disappeared, but whispers beneath the surface, waiting to be listened to with different ears. The true vanishing, some argue, is not of the people, but of memory itself. Colonial narratives rewrote the past, casting the Amazon as empty wilderness to justify conquest. The reality, that it had once been home to vibrant, complex societies, did not fit the image of a land awaiting European discovery. So memory was suppressed, documents ignored, oral traditions trivialized. In forgetting, The world erased the legacy as surely as the forest erased the stone. Perhaps what LiDAR is restoring is not just archaeology, but memory itself. A reminder that what we take as truth is often curated by those who benefit from forgetting. And still, the great question lingers. Was the Amazonian civilization unique, or part of something far larger? Were these cities a singular miracle of ingenuity, or a surviving remnant of a knowledge that stretched across the globe before recorded history? The raised causeways and vast plazas bear an uncanny resonance with the avenues of Teotihuacan in Mexico, the processional ways of ancient Egypt, even the stone alignments of Britain. Coincidence, or evidence of a shared inheritance now almost lost? Every answer stirs new doubts. Every theory opens fresh possibilities. The jungle conceals as much as it reveals, and each discovery through technology like LiDAR reminds us that our story is still unfolding. The silence of the forest is not emptiness, but a veil, behind which civilizations breathe in forgotten time. Perhaps they await not rediscovery, but remembrance. And if entire civilizations can vanish without a trace beneath the trees, how many more lie hidden, waiting for the world to remember them? The journey through the shadows of the Amazon has been less a straight path than a spiral, drawing us deeper into mysteries that refuse to resolve. What began with whispers of fantasy and tales dismissed as exaggeration has been reshaped by technology, revealing evidence so vast that it overturns centuries of assumption. Where scholars once saw an impenetrable wilderness, LiDAR has sketched sprawling avenues, geometric plazas, and causeways that stretch across miles of rainforest. The Amazon, long imagined as a void on the map of civilization, now emerges as a hidden chapter of human history, one that complicates everything we thought we knew. The contradictions echo across every layer of the story. Explorers like Percy Fawcett spoke of lost cities, only to be mocked and discredited by contemporaries. Indigenous oral traditions told of ancestors who built vast settlements, but their words were cast aside as myth. Science insisted the soil and ecology could never sustain urban populations, yet the evidence shows the opposite. Carefully engineered earthworks, vast networks of cultivation, and a scale of human presence that defies the image of scattered tribes. Truth was buried, not only under the trees, but under the weight of disbelief. Even the builders themselves linger in ambiguity. The mainstream narrative speaks of complex indigenous chiefdoms, organized but vulnerable to collapse when confronted with disease and conquest. Yet the monuments, alignments, and sheer scope suggest something beyond mere survival. The cities resonate with patterns seen half a world away, avenues aligned to the stars, ceremonial plazas echoing sacred geometry. Were these echoes coincidence, or signs of a deeper inheritance? Knowledge carried across ages and oceans from forgotten sources. Myths of giants, gods, and mysterious visitors complicate the picture further. Are they symbolic, or fragments of memory that scholars have been too cautious to consider? The vanishing of these civilizations leaves an even deeper unease. If millions once thrived here, where did they go? Disease, climate shifts, floods, conquest, all are partial answers, none fully satisfying. Perhaps the people did not vanish but adapted, dissolving into smaller communities, their memory fractured but not lost. Perhaps the legacy of their knowledge still breathes in indigenous traditions of planting cycles, celestial observation, and flood myths. Perhaps the ruins are not ruins at all, but reminders that collapse is not an ending, only a transformation. And yet, the suppression of memory raises its own troubling question. How much of this forgetting was accidental, and how much was intentional? Colonial ideologies had little room for the possibility of advanced civilizations beyond Europe. To admit their existence would have disrupted the narrative of discovery and superiority. So the Amazon was cast as empty wilderness, and the truth was left to rot beneath the forest floor. Only now, with machines able to pierce the canopy, does the forest begin to speak again. And it does so with a voice that challenges everything we thought was settled. What unites all of these threads is a haunting sense that human history is far older, stranger, and less understood than textbooks would have us believe. Time and again, we stumble across evidence that does not fit the neat progression of primitive to advanced, simple to complex. Instead, the pattern looks cyclical, civilizations rising, flourishing, and collapsing, leaving behind fragments so strange they are mistaken for myths until technology catches up centuries later. If it happened in the Amazon, could it have happened elsewhere, in places still buried under sand, sea, or stone? The Amazon is not merely a local mystery, it is a mirror reflecting a larger possibility that humanity has lived through forgotten cycles of knowledge and loss, that floods, plagues, or cataclysms have erased entire chapters of our story. Those myths we dismiss as imagination may in fact be dimly remembered truths, and if this is so, then our history is not a straight line at all, but a labyrinth with paths leading both forward and back into shadows we have yet to explore. In the end, what we are left with is not resolution but awe and unease. Awe at the ingenuity and resilience of those who once shaped the Amazon into cities that rivaled the great civilizations of the world. Unease at how easily such a vast achievement could vanish, erased from both land and memory, leaving us to wonder what else lies forgotten. Perhaps we have only begun to scratch the surface. LiDAR has revealed hundreds of structures, but beneath the vast expanse of the rainforest lie millions of square miles still unexplored. Every scan seems to uncover new patterns, new hints of cities still sleeping beneath the canopy. What remains hidden may dwarf even what we have already found. The forest, it seems, is not only a keeper of life, but a keeper of secrets. And so the Amazon holds its silence, offering glimpses but never a full confession. The more we uncover, the deeper the mystery grows, as if history itself resists being fully known. And that may be the greatest revelation of all, that our past is still alive, waiting to be remembered, and that every answer is only a doorway to more questions. The real mystery isn't whether a lost city lies beneath the Amazon. It's how many more are still waiting to be found.